We've been all right, and here we are. We're live. That was it. We just did an introduction and a countdown and all that kind of stuff. This is not our day so far. Angel, why don't you just tell us what you just told us already?
Yeah, I'll say it again. So one of the cool things about being full-time real estate is we get some freedom with our time, and I'm actually on a field trip with our two youngest. We are picking up trash for Earth Day, which is kind of gross because they're like little kids, like pre-K, kindergarten, first and second, and they don't understand when not to pick stuff up. So it's been fun yelling, no, while we're picking up trash. But we're getting it done. And so it's a pretty fun day, I guess.
Are they wearing gloves at least?
They have on one glove, but they keep touching their nasty, dirty glove with their clean hand. But it's not really clean because they've already played in the dirt. So, fun stuff.
Yeah, that's fantastic. But this is the REI Rocks Review, where we go through our summits that happen twice a year, our virtual summits. It's one of the big things for us. We're all based in Wichita Falls, Texas, is where we do our commercial acquisitions. And we end up doing these because it's not that easy to do live events when you've got a family full of people to take care of. But we are becoming very quickly the premier virtual event that happens each year. And I'm always excited when it happens. But we have all sorts of commercial real estate syndicators, investors, and all that kind of stuff talking. Now, I ended up making a unilateral decision to do Matt Kontoff's moderated panel on internationally investing. And I really enjoyed it. Matt is doing a great job of coming onto the scene and getting more people involved here. Angel, do you want to introduce what we're doing?
I can. So on this panel, we had both U.S. investors investing abroad and foreign investors investing in the U.S. So it was a really neat combination of people. And Matt did an amazing job. And if you see Matt posting, you better comment on it, because that's like his homework for this week. He's in a mastermind group with us, and he wants to get more social media posts going and find his way. He calls it obscurity. It's really funny. But he's just wanting to get more out there and make some comments. And so if you see him commenting, his name is Matt Kontoff, like it, comment back to it, do something, because we want to help him out.
Absolutely, definitely. And speaking of helping people out, we have bills to pay and all that kind of stuff. So we are able to do this with the benefits of our sponsors. So here's a little reminder that this space could be yours if you want more syndicator eyeballs, people in this industry. But of course, nothing is going to be complete without mentioning our gold sponsor, Sponsor Cloud. And I'll save you some breath here, and we'll add your little message here. So do not touch that dial. Check this out from our sponsor, Sponsor Cloud. Let's do this.
Hey guys, it's Angel, and we are super excited to announce our newest gold sponsors, Sponsor Cloud. If you're wondering what Sponsor Cloud is the one-stop shop for sponsors to automate, to delegate, to execute every aspect of their syndication projects, from affordable PPM generation to investor relationship management to fund administration and compliance, exclusive capital raising networking events. Plus, for the REI Rocks community, they're going to offer free migration and customer success services when switching from another provider. That's like a $2,000 value. So contact Sponsor Cloud, contact them today, and see how much time and money you can save. You can visit them at sponsorcloud.io/contact, and make sure you let them know that you're part of the REI Rocks community, because these sponsors are the reason why we are able to continue offering affordable and low cost, no cost education, summits, information, knowledge, experiences, all of the things that we're able to find and bring to y'all. It happens because we have sponsors like Sponsor Cloud. So check them out, see how they can help you out. And Sponsor Cloud, thank you.
All right, fantastic. And I'm back. I'm still magenta. I'll fix that in a moment, but I'm going to share this video here. That video a second ago was at one time speed, but we always watch these sessions at 1.5 times speed. It's a great way for you to learn how to consume this information a little bit faster. And we always have the captions on so that you can keep track. So don't adjust that dial. Let me just go ahead and add that here. I guess we could say a few things about more of our contributors here. Like we have Frank Podolano here. We've got Ava and August on there too. Do you guys have anything to add before we get started with their presentation?
Well, I mean, I guess I could break it down a little bit because I don't remember if they talk about where they're located and where they invest. So Frank is U.S. based, and he has some investments over in the Dominican Republic in Punta Cana. And Matt is U.S. based. He's got some, it's a spec house in Bali, so they're looking to do some more over there. And I believe they're trying to do a hotel over there now as well. August and Ava have a fund geared towards like Canadian investors. They are moving to Florida, but they're still going to be using their fund as a way to help Canadian investors invest in the U.S. And then Kevin is actually in Trinidad and Tobago, and he invests in the U.S. as well. So like I said, there's two, well, I guess there's three of us because I'm over there too, but there's 2 U.S. investors investing abroad and then 2 abroad investors investing in the U.S. So it's really super neat, and I'm excited to hear what they have to say.
Definitely. You know, Kevin is definitely one of our besties. You know, he's trained as an accountant, and I always like to bug him being in Trinidad and Tobago because last I checked, most humans can only be in one place at a time. I like to say that it's something to do with quantum entanglement or something like that. So Jason, you got the PhD in chemistry. How can somebody be in 2 places at once? Is that something? Have we got the technology for that?
I mean, you can get like wormholes, maybe. I don't know.
There you go. So we'll have to ask him about that when we're done talking about these commercial real estate deals. Let's get started.
All right, so hello, y'all. It was awesome over at Vinky's Meetup. If you were interested in the triple net or hearing any of that, that was Dan Likowitz. And he is into vipers, not the snakes. He's into the cars, which he kind of giggled about that and was like, yeah, it was a different conversation. But I always think it's funny because there's not a whole lot of people that are into vipers. They were cool when I was a kid. But anyway, that was where we were at from 12 to 1 Central. Tomorrow at 12 to 1 Central, we'll be over at Brian Briscoe's Meetup. So we're all a happy family. This is a great space to be in, and we enjoy being at each other's events because it helps do some cross-pollination, and it brings more awareness to all of us. So we like that piece of it. Matt, I'm going to let you take over, and I'm going to duck out. Okay.
Thanks, Angel. I appreciate it. I want to thank you for letting me have this panel and be the moderator here. I'm honored to be on the same panel with everybody here. This panel is going to be next level. We're going to talk about investing internationally, and we're going to drill down and learn about the hows and whys and other unique issues investing internationally in real estate in other countries. So I just want to kick off and start with the basics. Tell us who you are and your first international investment. And so we'll just go around the room. Kevin, why don't you start off?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Matt.
Sure.
So I'm Kevin. I'm in Trinidad and Tobago, and my first investment was a single-family house in Florida, Palm Bay, Florida.
Okay, cool. I just want to add that what's interesting here is our audience is probably mostly U.S., but we have a mix of 50-50 U.S. and non-U.S. citizens investing in different countries. So it's kind of interesting. Mix that way. Ava and August, do you want to go and tell us about yourselves?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for the opportunity to be here today. I'm looking forward to the conversation with everyone. I'm Ava Benasaki. I'm the CEO and co-founder of CPI Capital. We're a real estate private equity firm based in Vancouver, but we're moving our headquarters shortly to Naples, Florida. So we're really excited about that. Our first investment, international investment, we bought a multifamily asset. It was a large one. It was about 350 units, and it was in Orlando, Florida, called the Braxton Waterley. And it was a multifamily garden style Class A asset. We were able to bring on international capital to that property, and we relieved a lot of pain points for Canadian investors.
Awesome. Yeah. August Biniaz, co-founder of CPI Capital. Again, our mandate, we are a real estate private equity firm based in Canada. Just like Ava mentioned, our headquarters are going to be moving to the US, but we're still going to be servicing Canadian investors. We really saw a pain point, a need that existed for Canadians to be able to have exposure to US multifamily asset class that was beating the S&P 500, has beaten the S&P 500 greatly over the last 20 years. So we wanted to create exposure for Canadians to be able to have access to this asset class in a passive way. So, initially we started as a fund model to bring some equity to, other teams and partner up on a JV basis. And now our firm is, doing his own acquisitions. So again, this international twist is really a great conversation to have because every year there's billions of dollars being invested from Canada into the US, both on the retail and institutional level. For example, the Canadian Pension Fund, one of the largest pension funds in Canada, partnered with Greystar, one of the largest developers and managers of multifamily to purchase multifamily and build multifamily in the US. So you have this kind of global real estate investments, cross-pollinating across all regions. But a very important point I want to touch on and focus on as well is that within the US itself, really being able to invest outside of your region in some cases is like investing in a different country. If you're in California and you're investing in Texas or Florida, it really feels like a different country. And you go there and, the political views are different. Everything is so polarized. So don't just think about international investing and bringing investors to invest in your products or investing internationally. Look at it as also being able to invest in different states as well. And we'll touch on all that great stuff. We'll touch on boring stuff like compliance, capital raising. We'll get into all of that.
Good point.
Yeah, lots to talk about in just an hour, I'm sure. All right, thank you very much. That's way cool. Frank, you want to jump in? And
yeah, so Frank Padovano, I was a little excited by August's definition of American investing because I'm in 9 different markets across the United States, but sometimes it does feel like I'm in a different country sometimes. With that being said, my first, we have two brands that are international, one real estate, one not. Our non-real estate brand is our Real Agent Helper. We have virtual assistants in 6 countries. So just all the different global transfers and everything else is quite different. And then just about a year ago, we bought a boutique hotel in Punta Cana, Dominican Republic. So a whole different world, island time, and we'll definitely talk about it.
cool. Yes. And thanks, Frank. So I'm also invested internationally. I'm building a ground up development in Bali, Indonesia. We're going to build about a dozen villas, which we're going to rent long term, and then build some cottages that we'll rent short term, like an Airbnb, but probably more like a hotel or something. But I have to agree with what you say. The culture in Bali is so different. It's a shock, and it's a learning process. So next I want to ask you guys about how you found your international property, and do you have boots on the ground, and how that works, and how did you find the property? So Kevin, you want to start? I think we'll go in the same order.
Yeah, no problem. So this is going back from the very first one, I guess. So literally that was more of an act of faith more than anything else. I just connected with one of my friends and told him I was looking for a real estate tax attorney. That's what I was looking for at that point in time. But he said he doesn't know one, and he introduced me to an investor. And with that investor, he was an older gentleman, and I guess based on the relationship he had with the guy that I knew, I put a lot of trust in him with that first purchase, and we went in 50-50 on that deal. But subsequent to that, I started building relationships on the phone, connecting with realtors, property managers, other investors in a specific area that I was looking to invest in. And eventually I made a trip and met some of them in person, kind of solidified the relationship a little more. And probably a year and a half after that, I went into another investment based on contacting them and working with them throughout that period, and just continued building relationships, going into other properties, other investment opportunities, and having boots on the ground, as you mentioned, in those areas as well. Yeah.
Cool. Frank, you want to go next? How did you find your hotel in Punta Cana?
Do you want to go the same order, Matt, or how do you?
Okay, it doesn't matter to me.
Totally up to you guys. Maybe Frank can go, because Ava and I talk for too long. Go ahead, Frank.
All right, fine. Either way. So my partner on the VA business, he's from the United States, but he's of Dominican descent. And he knew that I did a lot of real estate through syndications and just buying property. And I was always telling him stories about how I was buying some new property, this or that. Angel and I were working on that deal in Texas. And after we closed on that, he said to me, he says, someday I hope to own property in my parents' home country. And I said, dude, let's do it. So buying the hotel became a little bit of a passion project. I would say that we're just starting to make money, but we haven't necessarily made a killing on it. And he had been to Punta Cana before a number of times. He, like I said, he was born in Rhode Island, so it's not like he's an expert. He's not boots on the ground per se. He tries to get down there 1 week a month. We have a camera system, so I can see a lot of things going on. We have WhatsApp connected with all of our employees. So, I'm still connected to the business each and every day, checking bookings and seeing the camera, seeing what's going on, stuff like that.
Way cool. Yeah, WhatsApp is critical. Bali is 12 hours ahead, and it's really important to be able to connect that way. Go ahead, Ava and August.
All right. So, a little backstory. When we decided, I was in real estate for about a decade before we started our pivot to real estate private equity about 3 years ago now. And August will tell you about his background. But when we decided that we wanted to buy an institutional asset that's 100+ doors, a multifamily asset from day one, we really felt like we had to educate our investor community that we currently had on this concept of passive investing and what's kind of in it for them and so forth. So we educated our investor community for about a year to a year and a half before we actually took down an institutional deal. But we realized, and this is just reality, to take down an institutional deal on your own the first time is going to be very, very difficult. There's so many moving parts to it. So we decided to actually partner up on our first property in order to take down a 350 unit property in Orlando, Florida that I was talking about. And that's kind of how we started and got our foot in the door investing in the US and getting our access to what we feel is one of the best performing asset classes.
100%. 100%. I'll take a step back. We were both real estate professionals. I was a developer here in Vancouver. Ava was an agent, top performing agent. And when we saw the potential that existed in the US, particularly multifamily, and this concept of value add, where private equity firm, real estate investment firms were buying already built asset, already stabilized assets, and they were going in there because they're cash flowing from day one. They're going in there and increasing the value by doing some small renovations. Yeah. This was one of the 8 wonders of the world, because by increasing the rents by a nominal amount, $100, $200 on a 100-unit building, you're forced appreciating an asset by millions of dollars. So
insane numbers.
So we fell in love with that idea right away. So now we had a few hurdles to go through. It was taxation, compliance, and executing the business plan, basically performance. So taxation, compliance, and performance. So the question was, how do we start? What's the first step to take? And my advice, coming from the development background, was I had deals all the time. The issue wasn't the deals. The issue was equity and debt. That was a difficulty. That was my pay points as a developer. It wasn't the deal flow. So when we started CPI Capital, my advice to the team was, let's focus on marketing. Let's focus on building a brand around ourselves, our business. Let's focus on connecting with investors and the equity side of the business. We can always go hire an asset manager and acquisition director and get deal flow going. But we can never really hire someone to go raise you capital. If there is such a person that exists, the cost of capital might be too high for your deal. So we focus on building a brand around ourselves, recognizing our mandate, what it's going to be. But then to be able, just like Ava mentioned, to be able to bring this 100+ unit apartment community to our investors, we didn't have the infrastructure internally to be able to source such deals, underwrite deals, and go through the whole process. And so it was out of a need, not a want, that we partnered with other groups at a lead sponsor on a co-GP basis and brought our investors on board. But that's kind of the way we went about kind of sourcing our deal, was mainly sourcing the best sponsors that were active in regions we wanted to be active, which was the Sunbelt states.
And then what better way to learn from partnering with a superstar, to learn their systems and processes, to then now we're on our own doing our own deals.
And we are super duper stars now after doing that.
Can you share who you partnered with initially?
Yeah, sure. We partnered with Dan Hanford, Passive Investing. That was somebody we partnered with, and they've helped a lot of different groups. So we learned lots from him. He's a great friend. Yeah. And we did 2 deals with Dan, but eventually we got to a point that we wanted to do our own deal. So we brought on an acquisition director, an asset manager. We have and now that the market has slowed down a bit, it's a great time to build the internal infrastructure of the company, your systems and processes on how you get deals coming in, and asset.
So they were talking about finding great sponsors and how that's a big hurdle to getting into this business. Like, a lot of people, when they think about taking over a commercial property, they're like, yeah, but that's millions upon millions of dollars. You know, how on earth am I going to get a piece of any of this? And it really is about networking. And I think that gives me the perfect segue into Marvelous Mondays, every Monday. So you can meet people like Kevin and Matt and Frank and August and Ava. They're not around that frequently on Marvelous Mondays, but Angel, if you want to unmute, you want to say a few things on how this is a great way to meet some syndicators and investors?
Am I unmuted now?
You are.
Okay. So Marvelous Mondays, we meet every Monday at noon Eastern, and there's 25 to 40 of us that show up pretty regularly, and it's just a great place to meet people. We're super laid back. People are going to answer your questions. Nobody's going to laugh at you, because we've all got questions, and everybody has a ton of questions when they're getting started, and you don't know what you don't know. So it's a really super great place to be, and really accepting, and just a wonderful place to learn from others.
And all you have to do to register is completely free, and you're not going to be pitched a bunch of things like while you're there. It's not that sort of it's not that sort of gig. But if you just scan the QR code that's on your screen, or if you visit the academypresents.com/meetup link, that's a great way to meet more people in this industry. And now that Jason has his new podcasting microphone, it's so much nicer. He's going to be contributing a lot more. So let's hear that wonderful radio voice there, Jason, for a second. Maybe you can read the Declaration of Independence or something, or a phone book.
I'll start with a phone book. Oh, hold on, Let me pull one up. I haven't seen a phone book in years.
Yeah. They kind of gone the way of the dodo. But you are watching the REI Rocks review, where we review these different presentations, these master classes, these panel discussions on commercial real estate. And this particular one is about investing internationally. So that means from the United States to other countries, and then also from outside of the United States and inside different places, like where we're based in Wichita Falls, Texas. So let's continue hearing from Frank Padalano, Ava Benisaki, and August Biniaz, Kevin Leonce, and Matt Kontoff, who is now joining us. Matt, how you doing today? Thanks for joining us.
I'm doing great. I'm just trying to figure this all out. So
all good.
Well.
All good. Yeah. It's funny. Sorry for just jumping this on you last minute, and thanks
No
for being a
problem.
great sport. But just sit back and relax. I don't know if you have any popcorn, but you already did all the hard work during the actual presentation. So, but really glad to have you here.
Thanks.
All right,
It was one of my things to actually review this on my own. So having this extra input is great. So thank you.
There you go. Getting two birds with one stone. That's the good stuff. Rock and roll.
Yep.
To managing the deals eventually, because it's not just about finding the deal, finding the equity, it's also executing the business plan. So that's another very important part.
Cool. Awesome. That sounds like a great beginning. I wanted to ask about, well, so in Bali, I'm learning that there's all kinds of different laws. The culture is totally different. The taxation is interesting. I know that the tax collector will just come knock on the door and collect the taxes. They'll just give you a week notice and here we go. Here's a check. There's no, central collection authority, I guess. Anyway, what have you guys found about the different laws and taxation and cultures, and were there any surprises that you ran into that you didn't expect along the way? Go ahead, Kevin.
Yeah, sure. So that's an interesting question. I have lots of stories with that, because for me, I initially, with that very, very first property, I put that into a Trinidad registered LLC, which to me was fine, and there's no problem with that. We do have a double taxation treaty with the US. So I paid taxes in the US, and whatever difference to make up the full amount in Trinidad, I would pay over here. But the issue arose when it's time to sell the property. There's this thing called FIRPTA, which is Foreign Investment in Real Property Tax Act. And that is a 15% withholding of the proceeds from your sale. And they will keep that until you submit your final tax return. And if there's any difference, or yes or no, maybe refund or additional liability, well, they just have to clear that off. So that definitely was new to me. And as a result of experiencing that, I ended up having to register US LLCs to hold the properties that I have, which in itself is not an ideal situation for me. It's something that I'm still working through, because there are a lot of nuances that I don't know as yet, and a lot of people don't know because of the fact everyone's situation is different, or every country's situation is different, and tax laws are different. So it will be specific to that individual, So that was my experience with respect to that.
Okay, cool. Thanks. Yes, the taxes are daunting, even if you live in this country. It's just incredible. So having to learn.
Pause it right there. One thing that you may run into when you're investing from abroad is like the standard practice, if you are American and a U.S. resident, is to use an LLC. But if you want to stick to appreciation modes, like let's say, real estate is your side hustle, you might be better off with a C Corp, because then it can actually hold assets rather than just being a pass-through entity like an LLC. So there's a lot to it for sure. It's a tough one, but we're not financial advisors or lawyers or whatever. Let's continue.
Learn someone else's rules and regulations is tough. Ava and August, do you want to go next?
Should we let Frank go again, since we're blabber on? Should we? Yeah,
I don't care.
Go ahead, Frank.
So to be honest with you, we haven't fully figured out taxes yet, because we just bought in the last year. The biggest difference I will say in taxation that I found interesting, so much so that I don't want to believe it, is that because we own a property and own it as a Dominican business, we don't actually pay the same type of property taxes. There's like a minimum tax that we have to pay, but if we pay business taxes, then we don't have to pay the same type of property taxes. If we owned it as individuals, I think we would have to pay more property taxes, but they're offset, which is just quite interesting. Like I said, we still haven't completely figured it out yet, but we've been told by multiple lawyers and accountants that that's how it works. All I know is it's due right now, so we got to figure it out pretty soon. In regard, another thing that was interesting, I know that in the United States, when you let go of an employee, there's a certain type of fees and taxes and charges. And there, it was quite interesting when we fired our first employee. They basically brought a form from the government that showed exactly how much we owed them in extra salary compensation for the time that for the time they'd worked for us. So it was, we were going to pay them, but it was weird to get an official form from the government stamped that showed exactly how much it was, because we were, I guess, off on the numbers.
You didn't guess right.
Oh, we were close, but just not close enough.
Okay, cool. All right, Ava and August.
Yeah, great. I'm going to combat this question in from a few different ways. Number one is, I don't know how much I want to get into this, but I love boxing, and there was a boxing two-time champion, and he was a boxing coach, and he passed away. But he used to, when they talk about boxing critics and kind of talking about boxing, he used to say, you don't know bleep about boxing, and that phrase kind of got really common in boxing. People would say that you don't know bleep about boxing. And to tell you guys this, and as shocking as this sounds, when it comes to cross-border or international taxation issues, most CPAs, most accountants don't know bleep about taxation. And now this is shocking and it just blows your mind, but we went through it. We've probably interviewed, not only on our podcast, Real Estate Investing Demystified, but also for our business. We probably interviewed and have had discussions with over 20 different CPAs, tax experts, tax lawyers, to finally come up with the most tax efficient way to allow Canadians to invest into our syndicated deals in the US. It was a grueling, cumbersome process to even figure it out. So that's the first advice. It's not as simple as that, because we had a certain pain points and difficulties. We wanted our investments to be very inclusive. We wanted Canadians to be able to, invest in our deals, not have to file US taxes, for there to be not to be double taxed, not to deal with the IRS. So there was a lot of needs that we had. And so it was really a learning curve that we went through to figure out the process. But currently on our investments, our Canadian investors don't need to file US taxes. Right. They don't need to deal with the IRS. There is no withholding tax because
they invest in Canadian dollars.
Another thing was the Forex kind of risk as well, was that, we initially went on our first deal, we requested our investors to go and exchange their Canadian funds into US funds. And one of the common questions was Forex kind of risk. And, when they invested compared to when the property is sold, what if their rates are different stages at that time? That was another question that come up. So now, Canadians can invest just with their Canadian dollars, very streamlined. They don't have to get an ITIN number. They don't have to get an EIN number if they're a corporation. They don't have to deal with the IRS. Nobody wants to deal with a taxman, let alone having to deal with two taxmen every year. So it's really, structuring the deal. One more item. I know you have some comments about this as well, Ava. Well, one more item I want to touch on is private equity. Is when you're out there raising capital, and then you have the compliance component of it as well. It's not just yourself buying a property in Asia or buying a property in Mexico. Is you're raising capital from these foreign investors, and you're pulling the capital and you're bringing it into your deal. Now you're a fiduciary to all of these investors, and it's a lot more sensitive. So that's another kind of topic to kind of make sure to think about, because it changes things for a Canadian to buy U.S.
Yeah, he's about to switch there, and before he does, I just want to mention the currency thing, because there's actually, to put it in perspective, it's very similar to investing across the United States remotely. You don't have to deal with an actual currency difference, but the equivalent would be things like, what's the job growth like in that area? If there's a lot more people moving to that state, to that area, then that means there's more demand for the real estate inventory that's there. And so that means the likelihood that you'll be able to raise rent is pretty good. So it's not really that different from when you're investing abroad, because you're saying it's like, okay, so what really is their economic play here? If you're thinking in terms of store of value, a lot of people think of precious metals as store of value, but that's really a very big part of the game here in real estate is to store some of your wealth in something that will keep up with inflation. But you have to be thinking the same thing abroad of what's going to actually come to be. Were there any thoughts, anything that you guys wanted to add or mention before we continue?
I don't have anything.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right, then we'll continue. We've only got about 15 minutes left. We started doing this big tease here where you have to actually join the VIP group, the subscription, in order to get access to the full section. And I'll throw this up on here so that you know how to access that. It's just theacademypresents.com/VIP. And that's where you can access all of the summit content from the years of these summits that we've been doing since 2020. Angel, do you want to say a thing or two about how there's more than 250 hours of content now? Are you still able to unmute and come on?
Yeah, I'm up to 2% now. So basically, all the summits all of the content is there, and it is well over 400 hours now. So I don't think there's any other place where you're going to get that much content and that much value for under $20 a month. So the VIP subscription is an amazing way to get a ton of education at a very reasonable investment.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I completely agree. And this is great practice watching these reviews. We're watching at 1.5 times speed. If you are going to be consuming pre-recorded content, it's such a valuable thing to do, to learn how to consume it at an increased speed. And we always have these captions on these videos so that you can read whatever you need and whatever's going on as well. But this is the REI Rocks Review. We're here on Fridays at 11 a.m. Eastern, and that's how we share more of this content with you. So let's continue. Matt Kontoff moderating this this panel here.
Real estate is much more streamlined, but if they have to be an LP, a passive investor, a limited partner into deals, it changes the process as well. So that's another point I want to touch on. And yeah,
I was going to ask you about capital raising. That's my actually next question. So I know it's hard to raise capital in the U.S. It must be harder to raise capital for projects overseas. How have you experienced that?
Yeah, for sure. Well, the appetite for Canadians, again, they all want to get their hands on U.S. real estate. To be honest with you, the rent value ratios in the cities here in Canada that have showed that market appreciation, it's really not comparable for what you can achieve across borders. So again,
you guys have this 1% rule in some areas where your 1 month's rent equals to 1% of the asset value. If you compare the same thing with Canada, like here in Vancouver, that ratio is at 25 basis points. 0.25% is what the rent to value ratio, and this is globally. Rent to value ratios, in some cases, when you talk about short-term rentals and what have you, those values are higher. But in most cases, rent to value ratios are extremely low. US, in my research, has the highest rent to value ratio. So yeah, the appetite, and this wasn't only US real estate. This was particularly multifamily institutional. How can a high-income earner in Canada be able to buy a $30 million asset? It's difficult to enter, but as an LP, that allows you to enter those things.
So when we first founded our company, this tax education to investors, when they get on a call and you have to start telling them, our first couple of deals, investors did have to get an ITIN number. They did have to file annual taxes to the IRS, which is an extra cost of maybe $600 to $1,000 per year. So it eats away from their cash flows. So as we grew our company and as we started figuring things out more and more, capital raising is getting easier and easier, because once an investor's mind is filled with complexity of the cross-border taxation, they definitely put, there's a red X saying, I'm not interested in investing in this deal.
It's just an extra hurdle.
It's just an extra hurdle.
We'll touch on compliance as well. It's important to touch about the compliance side of it, and I will touch on that if you like, Matt.
Well, I just wanted to know if the Canadians that are laundering their money, investing with you, are investing. You're solely U.S. investors.
That's right. Yes,
Exactly. Now, I want to touch on the compliance.
I just want to say one more thing. I spoke to over 1,000. I spoke to over 1,000. August and I are always fighting over the mic, so I'm just going to push it over.
Right.
August and I, so I've spoken to over 1,000 investors, and we've built Canadians investing in U.S. multifamily. If you type that, or if you put in Canadians investing in U.S. multifamily, I believe in a Google search.
Yeah, if you search any type of those phrases, go ahead.
It'll pop. We'll pop up in several feeds. And what that's done for Canadians, particularly looking to invest across borders, it's relieved them from the anxiety, because they'll reach out to us and they'll say, hey, Eva, I've invested with a U.S. operator before and I was double taxed, and I invested $1 million. So it created a lot of anxiety for them, and they usually look forward to getting on a call with us, and then we can really break down on how, by investing through CPI Capital, through the entities that we create, the flow through entities we create, we can relieve them from all of these points.
If you're, as far as compliance, I'm happy to touch on that as well, but let us know if we're taking too much of the.
Maybe we can get to that later. I guess compliance is not on my list of exciting topics that I think listeners will be interested in. But I do want to talk about. I want to hear what Frank and Kevin's experiences have been about raising capital for overseas projects. But I do want to add that before we get into that, I want to talk about myself first. Is that okay? I want to mention that for the Bali project, we had to raise cash. They don't allow investors to use debt at all. You can't use debt, so it's got to be all cash. And so we had to raise enough cash to lease the land and build the spec house. You can I think only Balinese nationals can borrow money for a project like that. So it's a totally different model. So yeah, Kevin, do you want to talk about?
You build a custom house, not a spec house.
It is a custom house.
Yeah, a spec house is usually you're speculating that you want to sell it to the market, so it's a for sale product. If you're keeping it for yourself or you're renting it out or as a long-term play, you build a custom house.
Well, it is a custom spec house model house. So Frank, did you have to raise money for the Punta Cana hotel?
I would say, so the first deal that we did was a joint venture. I would say it was a struggle to start out, because in the United States, we're used to quick conveniences. And I can open up an LLC within a day. I can open up a bank account within a day. And the whole process on the island is completely different. It took us weeks to get a company formed, and then it took us months to get a bank account. I would say that I could not get one American bank to lend in Dominican Republic, and I couldn't get one Dominican bank to lend us to start a business. They would have lent to me to buy a second home or a condo, but not to actually open a business, probably because they don't have the same type of bankruptcy rules and stuff like that. So we originally did seller financing, but that was painful. And then I ended up putting all cash in the end. Within 4 months, we owned it outright.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah, we did the same with a lot of all cash.
Yeah. We were working on a second deal. I was trying to find a way, like August was saying, about avoiding the double taxation. So our strategy was, and I talked to Kevin about it, who's an accountant. He's still entertained by it. I'm not saying it's definitely going to work or not, but we ended up passing the deal. Was basically doing a debt syndication instead of an equity syndication, where we'd pay a higher return, but they would basically it would be an American corporation that would own the Dominican corporation. So they technically wouldn't own anything besides redeemable shares to our company, so that they wouldn't technically have to work on any type of international taxation.
Okay, cool. Kevin, have you been able to, do you raise capital in Trinidad and Tobago or just in the US?
So, well, both. And I do have a lot of individuals in Trinidad who are interested in investing, just haven't crossed that hurdle just yet in terms of navigating exactly what August and you was talking about, avoiding having them to pay taxes in the US and in Trinidad. You just have it in one location, because it does, create this, I don't want to do that because I have to pay taxes here and there. It's really a deterrent for them. So because of that, I just have them on a waiting list right now. And I'm more so focused on the US side in terms of raising capital. But as Frank just mentioned, we spoke about different avenues of investing, and I guess Ava and August are kind of more advanced than us with that respect. So it's something I guess we could discuss further just to work out some of the kinks.
Cool. Okay, great. Thanks. I'm assuming everybody's looking for their next overseas deal, or is this not part of a long-term plan? I get the sense that Ava and August, you guys are really focused on the US and you're moving here, and then it won't be foreign investment. It'll just be local investment.
No. We're still going to be servicing the Canadian investors.
What we're doing is we're actually creating one of the most inclusive Canadian funds out there for Canadians to get their hands on US real estate. And we're setting up a fund here in Canada. So it's going to be this evergreen fund where we can continuously raise from Canadians and then deploy the capital into our deals on the US side.
Yeah. So the structuring the deal is super important. On our first deals, first 3 deals, we syndicated the deals, but you couldn't just syndicate it on the US side. So you have your US entities, you have your US LPs who are investing in your syndication. And that entity is the entity that holds the asset, that owns the asset. And then in Canada, you're raising capital. Now your investors can't invest directly into the entity on the US side for tax reasons, for logistic reasons, and what have you. So we have to create an entity in Canada as well. We have to have our Canadian LPs who invest into the Canadian entity.
We pool together all the Canadian capital and we come in as one investor into the entity that owns the asset on the US side.
And now by doing that, we're triggering compliance needs on the Canadian side. So we have to deal with the regulators. And in Canada, it's provincial. So every province has its own it has its own regulatory body that we have to deal with, and we have our own exemptions, like how the US there is a Reg D, 506B, and 506C. In Canada, we have this kind of the same concept of raising capital, where you can raise different exemptions that exist as well. But I think Matt wants to jump in here. Did you know? Yeah. So yeah, in Canada we have basically different exemptions to raise capital. And a lot of time you hear this phrase exemption. Exemption from what? What are we being exempt from? You're being exempt from having to go through an IPO, having to go through a public offering. Obviously, as many of you are aware, going through an IPO process, raising capital for initial public offering is costly, it's cumbersome, is timely. You tell the regulators, hey, I just want to buy an apartment building. I don't want to wait 6 months and spend $500,000 to be publicly traded. They're like, okay, fine. Will allow you to take these exemptions to raise capital for your venture. So in Canada, it's the same concept. Now, the list of different exemptions that exist is, for example, the accredited investor exemption. We have the offering memorandum exemption. So offering memorandum is like the PPM in the US, which allows us to raise from accredited and non-accredited. We have the crowdfunding exemption. We have the family and friends exemption. So there's a list of exemptions that we could use to raise capital for our deals. But now there also has to be a level of consistency between the Canadian syndicated deal and the US syndicated deal, because on the US, we're using also an exemption to raise capital. So if we're using the 506B, which is B for Bravo, which is, you can raise from, non-accredited investors that you've had a pre-existing relationship with, right, might make it difficult for this foreign entity to come in and invest in your syndicated deal. And Ava was alluding to that, having gone through this process of syndicating deals on both sides of the border and having to deal with the regulatory compliance side of things, and also the rush. Canadian lawyers are much more costly than US lawyers. They're much more, they're much more slower than US counterparts. So they can't get a deal, put all the offering docs together in a matter of a week, like some US lawyers can do. So we're on a lag on the Canadian side. So the decision we've made is we are creating this evergreen Canadian fund that can continuously raise capital from Canadians. And the fund's mandate is to invest into our US deals, which will still be syndicated. So that's kind of the plans that we have long term, of how to not have to syndicate deals and not have to create new offering documents for each deal, at least on the Canadian side.
But I think, Matt, were you asking if we're looking for our next deal?
Yeah, but I was wondering, just a quick question on that. I'm wondering if the Canadian fund can also invest in a US fund. A lot of folks are starting funds here, and
yeah, great question. So the structure we're looking at, we're most probably going to have a US fund at some point. But there were all 3 of these entities will be independent. The Canadian fund will be independent, the US fund will be independent, and then deals will still be syndicated into their own entities. So these 2 funds, be it Canadian fund or the US fund, will act just as capital allocators into our own deals. Now we're the GPs on all the funds, so we have full control, but they're just capital investment vehicles that will invest into our own deals.
Okay, cool. Thank you. That's awesome. I want to know if Frankie, well, we talked about investing. I know you guys are investing next in the US. Frank, are you going to look for something else internationally? Maybe.
Always. Currently, we're looking at a new development. It would be a 100-room hotel and 28 houses in Roatan, Honduras.
Really?
Yeah, we're in negotiations with that right now. I know somebody that owns the land, and we're trying to build a syndication team and see if we can make it work.
I have a friend who's investing in Roatan. Her name is Melissa. I forget.
Darling, I know her.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, but cool. It's not her though. But besides that, we've also looked at a couple deals in Costa Rica as well.
Yeah, Melissa Darling.
Yep.
Cool.
And looking in Costa Rica as well. So.
Okay. Kevin, are you investing anywhere besides the US?
Not right now. I mean, the same principle. I guess the Canadians are a Commonwealth country, just like Trinidad, right? And that as Ava and August explained, that rent to value ratio is just 0.25 or 0.3, which really doesn't make sense. So for me, I got rid of all investments in Trinidad and just focus on the US, looking for more opportunities and just looking to build from there.
Okay, cool. You guys have, tell me about your exit strategies for these projects. Kevin, why don't you start?
Exit strategy, that's not a thought in my head right now. I'm focused on holding and just building a legacy. So yeah, exiting from it, that's not the intention. That's not the primary goal. So it's to hold, build a legacy, and just continue growing from there. So.
Okay. Frank, do you have a specific exit strategy, or you're just going to hold on to the hotel?
I wouldn't say we have a specific exit strategy. When our Dominican attorney first saw the property, he said, I hope you guys don't plan on selling anytime soon, because they're building all over around us. They're building 2 different residential complexes right across the side road, and then across the other way, they're building like a 250 unit condo development. So there's a lot of growth in that specific area. No, we're still more on the acquisition side. I mean, we learned so much. We learned ways in which not only did we probably overpay a little bit, but also just running the hotel, how we could run it differently to keep improving. So we're still acquiring in that neighborhood. We had a 28 unit under contract that we ended up passing on just because the numbers didn't work well enough for us. If we had nothing else going on, and if I hadn't bought the first one, I probably would have been stupid enough to buy the second one. But I was smart enough to realize that why should I try to lose money the first year when my goal is to make money every year?
Yep. Okay. Cool. Really cool.
Yeah.
I think it's great that the neighborhood is growing as well. So that will boost your value. Sorry, but go ahead.
Yeah, sorry about that. My apologies. I think Ava pinched me. That hurt.
Like, don't take it. Don't take
sorry. That was a little. The punishment didn't match the crime there, Ava. Just quickly get into it. So exit strategy really depends on the asset class, the business model, and your LP's needs, right? So what is the asset class you're purchasing? You purchase industrial, you're most probably not going to be exiting that in 2 years, right? And multifamily value add, particularly depending on what part of the cycle you're entering, the plan is that 3 to 7 years mark. In most cases, in the last decade, it's been more that 3 to 5 years mark. And the business model, again, like I mentioned, value add is you're going in there, you're doing some small renovations, proof of concept, you're leaving, in most cases, more meat on the bone. So another syndication group or another investor can come in and continue your business model. And then your LP needs, depending on your database of LPs that you have, Kevin and Frank are starting out with most probably JV partners who are going to be coming in, and they could soon go to that LP level. But they got to ask their audience, they got to ask their community, what do you guys, how long are you guys comfortable with having your money locked up? So it goes back really to your investors. And most LP investors understand that their investment is illiquid. Now, some of them are comfortable with their money being locked up for 10 years. So they seek funds and other investments. Some of them are fine with their money being locked up 3 to 5 years, potentially longer into syndicated deals. And some other real estate investors don't want to have complete liquidity, and they invest in REITs, public REITs, so they could exit them anytime. So it really depends on those 3 main points: your asset class, business model, and your LP's interest in how long they're willing to stay in the deal.
Okay.
I think that's a great place to stop and do our doggy bag. We always like to stop near the end and say what the real takeaways are. Angel, you've already unmuted. Do you want to start things off?
I can. So I think it's really important, and one of the things they really talked about and spent some time with is just to make sure that you've got the professionals in your life that are going to help guide you through, whether that's or even your lenders. They can help you out. That was one of the things Frank touched on and Matt touched on as well. It's like, how do you get money for foreign investments? Can't always get those loans, and a lot of times you have to just self-finance it. So above and beyond raising and communication issues, it's really important to have those professionals in your life.
Yeah, Angel, your connection's getting pretty bad there, and I'm having troubles understanding some of the other stuff there. Matt, we had you on here as sort of like an impromptu thing. What were some of your takeaways?
I appreciate having me on at the last second, so thanks for that. August talks about compliance, and I kind of poo-pooed going down that rat hole, and I think rightly so. That would have been a long detour away from just the basics of what I was trying to get folks to convey. And then the taxation piece, I think, is also something that would need to be touched on at some point. I personally don't know enough about it myself, which I need to correct. But yeah, I think a lot of good stuff came out of this.
Yeah, definitely. Nobody mentioned residency as being a key part of the taxation piece, which is that like if you are not actually physically present in the country that you're investing in, then your tax situation is a bit different. And it's one of the key pieces of the puzzle. Of course, you have to talk to somebody. But I think the other thing too is, like I ran into this just like August and Ava were saying, where I'd be talking to CPAs, and it's kind of confusing. It's like, well, how can you not know how this works? And systemically, I think what happens is people will find the solution for themselves, and then they just have no motivation to share it with anybody. Like even with your own accountant saying it's like, oh well, this is what I'm up to. It's pretty easy for it to slip an accountant's mind. But I think so much of this whole endeavor comes down to underwriting. And of course, we have our chief underwriter and fashionista on the line here, Jason. So what comes up for you? Like you agree that underwriting has to be a key part of this, where it's easy to say it's like, oh, you get taxed, so you're going to get a big bill. But at the same time, you're paying your 15%, your 20%, whatever it happens to be, based on what is likely bigger returns, especially compared to what Ava and August were describing in Vancouver. But what comes to your mind, Jason?
So the first thing you mentioned, your CPA might not know what to do, or it slipped their mind or whatever, but I think most of them probably have never come across it, and so they've never dealt with it. I would try to find a CPA who deals specifically in that. I'm sure there are some in some major metroplexes. I would not try them in my own hometown because there's nothing here. So I would do that for sure. And then once you at least nail that down, then you can start fine-tuning your underwriting, because you'll be able to have some guidance on how to handle the taxation and everything. So
I love it. And we got to wrap it up here. I should mention the other things, which is if you need some help with your underwriting, Jason is offering both a course like the coaching, individual coaching on underwriting, commercial writing, underwriting in several different sectors. So it's not just multifamily. He's also got that in some other things. So I want to throw that on the screen. The other thing is the Prosperity Sumus Mastermind is coming up, which I am really, really enjoying. I'm so happy that this is part of our business, because it really gives us a chance to level up and have accountability on a level that I don't think you can get just on your own or trying to wing it. So there are some codes here. If you're watching the replay, make sure that you pause it and you can scan these codes here. But that's what I have to say. I don't know, Angel, it looks like your connection's a little bit better. I don't know if you have something to say about that, or if we're just ready to give people their weekend back. What do you say, guys? All right. Well, then there it is. So thanks for watching. This has been fantastic. Another REI Rocks review. Hopefully you learned a thing or two, got some things to think about in international investing. We were talking about compliance. Reg S is something to take a look at if you are abroad and looking to invest, because that's what the SEC has on offer if you are not offering to Americans. So you can research that. But that's it for today. So thanks a lot for watching.
thanks.
See you, everybody. Thanks, Matt.